Okay, I think we're recording. So I didn't mean to depress you about the Cinco de Mayo thing. So today I said we were going to go over distributed power management. That was part of DRS because that was not in one of the labs. So the power management you set up on a cluster, and it tries to consolidate your virtual machines on as few hosts as possible, or still the load on the machines, RAM utilization and stuff is still acceptable, and then power off the machines that are not needed. And then if the workload ever kicks up, you can power on the shut off servers and migrate virtual machines across to them. So setup on that was, well, first you need DRS on and configured. And the next part would be whatever remote access card you have, ILO or a DRAC card, you need to know the login information to it, the IP address to it, and you also need to know the MAC address of the card for the power on, remote power on. So if I log into my HP ProLiant system here, I can go look up my system information. Well, apparently it logged me out. One thing about this power over Ethernet and stuff, you have to be on the same layer 2 network as your vCenter server is connected to. Same layer 3 network too. So we kind of got a problem. We got on the same layer 2 network, but our layer 3 network is on a subnet that our vCenter server doesn't have. So you might have to attach another network adapter into the vCenter server to give a second IP address. You could also SSH into the vCenter server, edit some configuration files, and add a second IP address. So I'm going to show the configuration, and I don't think I want to get into actually setting it up and making it work for everybody, but just so that you know the steps and stuff for DPM. So I look through my integrated lights out. I find the MAC address. Of the ILO card. And under the web client, on the cluster itself, you edit your cluster. Actually, before you can turn on power management, it has very similar thresholds as the DRS part. So I set it up here to manual, so if it does get configured correctly, it won't attempt anything. It shouldn't, because we don't have our vCenter server on the same subnet as our ILO cards. But on each of the individual hosts, you also have to go in and configure them for power management. This is actually being stored in the vCenter server itself. Is how to log into the ILO card. There's power management. So this isn't stored on the host, it's stored in the vCenter server. And you go configure power management, click on edit, and you'll see the pieces of information that you need. You got to have the MAC address. Make sure there's no stray spaces anywhere that will mess it up. The IP address, and of course the login information. Dell calls theirs a DRAC card. HP's is the ILO card. So that process would have to be done for every blade in the cluster to enable distributed power management. And if I wanted to configure 7, I'd have to go log into the ILO on 7 and get the MAC address. Because hopefully, you know, MAC address is different for every network adapter on the market. But that is the process of setting up DPM. And it's probably going to fail down here because the vCenter server only has an address in the 10.0 network, and it's not going to be able to route over to the ILO network to verify the information. That's why the progress isn't completing. So anybody have questions over how to set up DPM? It's pretty simple to set up. As long as your network's on the right network. So that, I believe, brings us over to that's finished up all of our Lab 20 and of our Module 10. So now we're at moving into Module 11, Vsphere Update Manager. We are towards the end of the course. So why do you need to update? So what's the importance of that? Well, there's always flaws in software. There's a new 0-day exploit out for Zoom, actually what we're using right now. And it's being offered on the market for $500,000. So I don't know who's going to pick up and purchase that. Nobody yet has purchased that exploit. There's one for Windows and one for Mac version of Zoom. And so far it's not been, nobody's bought it and it's not been used out on the real world. So who would spend $500,000 on an exploit? They said the most likely person would be a government hacking another government Zoom meeting. So like North Korea wanting to spy in on Trump's Zoom meeting with other world leaders, especially to see if there's any plots to nuke their little country. that would be somebody that would pay $500,000 for a 0-day exploit. The only thing is to actually exploit the current Zoom, you actually have to be in the meeting. So the news people are kind of wondering who's going to spend $500,000 if you have to use the exploit if you're in the meeting itself. That you'd probably be found out. And if you're spending $500,000, you're wanting to exploit that you can do completely remotely or nobody can find you. So they don't have a patch out for it yet because nobody's bought it to use it and nobody knows what it is and how to break in. But they are actively watching. So yeah, updates. Every single program has flaws. And about every single program finally ends up with a 0-day exploit at some point in time like that. So updating is critical. Also, after the end of class, you might uninstall the Zoom client if you've got it. That's a issue too. You install an app and use it for a couple of weeks and then you don't use it anymore. You leave it on your computer. Could be an exploitable chunk of code sometime later down the road. So, Update Manager. Back when I started teaching VMware, Update Manager resided on a Windows server. So you had to load out a Windows member server, not a domain controller. Remember, you don't put anything on the domain controller. You install a Windows 64-bit server, and then you install a little exe application that ran a database and set up Update Manager and linked in with the Vsphere server running somewhere else. And it did cool things. It patched the ESX host. It patched VMware tools. It even looked inside the guest operating system and could patch things like Chrome, Firefox, Windows itself, Word, Flash Player, Java. It was really awesome. And then they decided they'd come out with version 5.0, and they decided that in 5.0, they weren't going to patch all that other stuff anymore. They were only going to focus on the ESXi host and the appliances. So no longer can you patch your guest operating systems. That was the improvement from version 4 to version 5. Are you scratching your head about improvement right now? How is that an improvement? So apparently companies were using third-party patching tools and already had those in place. They weren't using the VMware's patching tool to patch the guest OSs. And they were just spending probably millions of dollars in salaries keeping this stuff up to date. So as a business model, it didn't make sense that they could put that development money somewhere else and develop better core product than trying to patch everybody else's product. So now we have Update Manager. Updates our vSphere environment. And one cool thing here was 6.5. I can't remember 6.0, but I know in 6.5, 6.7, they did a really cool thing. Update Manager is no longer a product that has to be installed on a Windows machine. It's actually installed when you install the vCenter server itself. Let's see, what is our okay, product locker. That's where you put the different tools in there, either VMware tools updates, Okay, so about the ESX host itself, the calling here is product locker. When you deploy VMware tools to a virtual machine, it comes from folders off the ESX host. So when you say upgrade, install VMware tools, we really didn't have to do that because our CentOS machine and most Linux distributions and stuff now have the VMware tools built into the guest OS. But if you had a Windows machine, you could go up to the little menu and tell it to install VMware tools. Let's look at that on a virtual machine. So there's install VMware tools. It would not be grayed out if you had a machine that did not have it installed. Say a Windows 2016, Windows 2019 server, you'd have to click the install VMware tools. And that would automatically load an ISO image up into the CD-ROM of the virtual machine. And there's a auto run on it. It should try to auto bring up and install. You typically have to connect to the virtual machine desktop at that point and go and click next through the setup wizard. If it doesn't auto install because of safety procedures on the guest OS that disables autoplay CD mounted images, then you'd have to access the CD drive letter, find the setup executable, and double click to install it. Once VMware Tools is installed though, Update Manager can make the process of updating VMware Tools on your host. So you go out and you've upgraded from 6.0 to 6.5 or 6.7 of ESXi. And the next one coming out here in next month is supposed to be 7.0. The Update Manager allows you to script and automate the upgrade of VMware Tools on all of your guest OSs. So that's cool. And other things it updates, any appliance that VMware supports, like Orchestrator and VMware Data Protection. That's the backup appliance that you can download. So any appliance that VMware pushes out, you can scan for and push updates to them. It doesn't push updates to the vCenter server itself. vCenter server itself has its own web interface that you have to go in and run updates on. Typically, you only have a very limited number of vCenter servers in your data center. So they didn't make that a easy automated process. You just have to go to the web page and keep it up to date. And then of course it updates the ESX host. You can even upgrade the ESX host. You just have to make sure your vCenter server is upgraded to the latest version. So I can't take 6.5 and upgrade my ESX system to 6.7 or 7.0. I would have to first update vCenter server to 6.7 or 7.0 before I could upgrade the ESX host. And too bad we're not at the university, because I planned on putting in the new systems. They're sitting in the floor in the front of the classroom, and I was putting 6.5 on it and then upgrading them to 6.7 using the Update Manager. So Update Manager, yeah, integrated with the appliance now. It's really great. It used to be quite cumbersome to have two separate systems. And if you had to restart the Windows server for Windows updates, you'd start getting errors in vCenter server, saying you couldn't communicate with the update manager. So it was kind of a hectic having them on two separate systems. But now that it's integrated, I think it's much, much better. And the rest of all this is basically going through the lab. All righty, let's see. Wrong number. I'm not sure if there's anything else in here other than pictures of what you would do to set this thing up. So there's a lab, but the lab has this think use Fox, meaning fake patches, and install it a weird way. So I don't think the lab is really useful. I think we may have to do this lab together. Let's see here. So task one is good. It's setting the DRS to be fully automated instead of manual. So one person in the supergroup needs to edit the DRS cluster and change it from manual to fully automated. And then we'll have to disable I have to open up admission control and disable admission control. We don't need to remove the memory and CPU reservations. We shouldn't need to. So task one is valid. So Anthony, you got it? I was hoping it'd let me cancel my task. It's not. Ryan remembered it was Thursday. Let's see, where is step 7 located at? Okay, so step 7 is, so if you clicked edit on your cluster, and you expand out, we put on fully automated. Yeah, admission control. And that's what I'm looking for. So admission control, define else host failover capacity. I think that right there is what we're supposed to disable. And then that, when you finish step 7, that should complete task 1. Let me look, make sure there's not anything else quirky in here. Yeah, that's all we needed. Let's make sure fully automated was on. Yes, we want to keep the memory reservations. So let me see if there's anything else that we can do. On the lab, so update manager. We don't want to do the update manager portion here because it's using fake patches. Why would you want to install fake patches? No point in installing fake patches. We should do real patches. So real patches. So everybody can look at this portion anyway. So if I click here on lab cluster, there's an update manager tab. The update manager tab should be located on about any of the objects that you have clicked on. So when you click on Update Manager, it operates in two different modes. It has an administration mode where you can go in and configure what is updated. Are you getting all patches? Or are you just getting the critical patches? What are you doing? And configuring when to update the system. So everybody can find the Update Manager tab if you have the lab cluster highlighted. And we all want to click on Go to Admin View. Let's see if this will be a little bit bigger on your screen. There we go. Maybe a little bit clearer. So if you're in admin view, you can always go back to compliance view if you want to. But what we want to do in here, we want to go to manage. So when you're on manage, there's some things in here to configure. So first thing, you're under settings. Let's click on download settings and look at that. So download settings, it shows sources that you can download. And it comes pre-built in to connect. I didn't want to move the column. Connects into VMware website, kind of like a Microsoft update for vApps and host updates. And so basically, Windows Update Center, but it's VMware update sites. So those are already pre-configured. If you're running a SAN or something, an HP Enterprise SAN, Dell Enterprise EMC SAN, things like that, sometimes they provide VMware updates or patches for their devices for VMware, and they will give you a URL that you can put into here. So third-party products and stuff could implement an update and work with this update manager, so you can go in here and edit and add other URLs if the third-party vendor supports the VMware's update process. I'm going to go down download schedule. So it looks like it's already set to automatically download, unless Anthony went in there and changed it already. So enable schedule downloads is set to yes. That's good. It was last run at 4:23 p.m. What an odd time. And it's going to next run today at 4:23 p.m. Oh, cool. Frequency daily. So every day it goes and checks VMware site to see if there's any new listed patches. Well, let's look what else we have in here. It checks to see if anything needs updated about every hour. I guess that's with what you've already got installed. VM settings, what do you want to do? Take a snapshot of the VM before remediating to enable rollback. Snapshot policy. Do not delete snapshots. Warning, snapshots reduce performance of the virtual machine. Deleting snapshots as soon as remediation is validated. So I think we might want to edit this. So if you click on edit, we probably can't all do this. So somebody in the group can click keep for maybe 24 hours. Would probably be a good thing to do. If you go remediate VMware tools or something, that'd be the main thing to remediate on virtual machines. So go ahead and put keep for 24 hours. And then the rest of us can click cancel while your partner clicks 24 and moves that radio button up. $100 hours. So once your partner's done with 24 and you hit refresh, the snapshot policy will be keep for 24. That's weird. Maybe somebody else will help out Tyler, since his is wanting to act weird. Somebody macroed his number 4 key to type 100 in, maybe. Could be internet connection. Have you tried turning it off and on? Yeah, that is something I had a program that screwed up. So they have really good tech support really fast. I jumped straight to technical support and start telling them my problem. And then I was like, well, I haven't restarted my computer yet. I'm a tech guy. I should have done that before I even talked to you. So I restarted my computer, got off the chat with them, and guess what? It worked. I apologize for being a tech person and not trying the reboot process first off. And just like, hey, it's not working. And I was like, now I understand why y'all say restart the machine. And he didn't really help anything. He just sit there and watched me chat and complain, and then like, oh, I didn't do this, and hold on, I'll be right back. If it's broke, I'll. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look at some of these other settings to see what else might need to be done. Host and cluster settings right here. This is some pre-stuff. When you go to remediate it, it can ask you these things. These are the defaults. So if I click edit on this screen, I think I'm going to do this one. VM power state. Do not change the VM power state. Well, that's probably a good thing. Temporarily disable any removable media devices that might prevent host from entering maintenance mode. That's probably a good thing, unless you've got some removable CD-ROMs that are required to run certain applications. I've seen some systems that housed like maintenance manuals and stuff on them that the CD-ROM had to be into the server. and they sent monthly maintenance manuals on it. So in a situation like that, you might make ISOs of those, and they may have attached ISOs to the virtual machine for a part shop or something. That might cause some issues if you had that checkbox, but it's probably rare. So I like to temporarily disable any removable media devices that might prevent a host from entering maintenance mode. And you can retry several times. Temporarily disable things. You can turn off power management so that it can actually power on the host. You can disable the high availability at mission control. Disable fault tolerance. You shouldn't really need to worry about powered off virtual machines being migrated to another host before you remediate. If they're powered off, then hopefully during remediation, they'll continue to need to be powered off. Putting the three checkboxes, the temporarily disable, DPM, admission control, fault tolerance. You may have a policy though at your company, you can't disable fault tolerance. That payroll virtual machine, just make sure you're not doing this during a Friday where they're cutting payroll checks. If it screws up, people will be angry. Putting those checkboxes, somebody in each group can modify that section, add those two checkboxes at the bottom and that temporary disable removable media at the top. That doesn't always work at the top. I have had to go in and eject a CD before. Especially if you have a Linux machine or a Windows machine is running a program off of the removable media and has it open, it might not allow it to be ejected. So I'll go and hit OK. And got those settings. Let's check other things. What about vapps? Smart reboot after remediation. Okay. The VApp should be migrated. Shouldn't have to reboot them. That's probably talking a little bit different than the actual VApp that you create. That's probably a virtual appliance that might be talking about. If you update a virtual appliance. Yep. So that'd be like VMware data recovery and stuff, I believe is what they're talking about there. So that's the configuration. You always want to go through and look at all of the settings if you're going to set up something in production, and really go read about all of the settings before you enable or disable them. So other things that we can do in here. Let's go to host baseline. So you can create a host baseline. You can create baselines for critical, non-critical, driver updates. You can create several different baselines, and then you could group those baselines together if you needed to. So right now we have two built-in baselines, non-critical, and then we got critical patches. So different amount of patches in each one. Well, let's go and create a custom one. You could probably just really use normal, but everybody can create their own if you have to. I just typically combine both of those together and patch everything. But let's go ahead and build our own and see what we can custom and do. So new baseline on the host baseline. So this is for the ESX host. You also have other baselines for the virtual machines themselves. You also have virtual appliance upgrades, ESXi upgrades from like a 6.0 machine to 6.5 machine. Baseline name. Well, we all have to be different, so let's use our last name. So give yours a unique name. And then you get to choose, what are we patching? We're patching the host extensions, or the host upgrade, meaning going from a 6.0 to a 6.5 machine. So we're going to do host patches. And let's go next. You can have fixed or dynamic. So fixed means you go in and you look at what's currently available today. You select what patches you want to apply. And once you do that, it never updates itself. So in next month, when they come out with new security patches, they won't be in the fixed baseline. Dynamic, on the other hand, you typically specify categories of patches like critical, security, things like that, and it checks daily. And if new ones come out, it automatically adds them in. So you may have to do, some companies may have to run fixed ones for the month. Those are the ones that you've verified work and doesn't shut your network down. And then the next month when new ones come out on a research development network, you test out the new patches and make sure they don't break anything. You roll out and test for about a week or two and make sure that you can roll them out, roll maybe the patch back, what are all the steps and any quirks. And once you figure everything is working good, then you go back and modify your fixed baseline and add those patches in once you verify they work in a lab environment. Well, let's stick with dynamic and go next. Yes, everyone does it. So when you're creating a baseline, you can patch VMware or Cisco. You're like, why is Cisco in there? Aren't they a third party? Well, VMware and Cisco own each other. They're one and the same, basically. That's why that they're Cisco Nexus series cloud-based switches. That's why VMware supports all of the proprietary Cisco protocols. And you have to pay extra if you're going to try to use a industry standard protocol. So let's click VMware. And let's click the embedded ESXi or ESX. What does Cisco have? Some type of patch for 5.5, but okay. We're only going to view patches for 6.5. Because that's all we have in our lab environment. You could use the control key and select multiple if you wanted. Just like selecting multiple files with the control key. Severity, any, critical, important, moderate, low. What do we want? We want all of them. Category, security fixes, bug fixes, enhancements, and anything else that they might come up with. I think any looks good to me. But you can narrow stuff down to critical and security. And that helps eliminate enhancements or anything new. You know, has anybody ever had trouble with a Windows 10 feature update where it broke something? Maybe it broke your sound or something like that in your game, and for a couple months until they come out with a patch for it. So that's where you can narrow down what are you getting patches for. So it's very controllable here with enterprise product. So I'm gonna go next. You can exclude patches. Maybe there's a patch in here that you know doesn't work with your environment. You could put a checkbox and say, do not install this one. This breaks the sound of Minecraft. You can't have that. So that's a possibility. But we don't know anything in our systems. I don't know of any patches that are bad, so I'm not going to check any of them. I'm going to go and just hit next. Additional patches. So these are patches that it knows about that's beyond the 6.5 that we selected that we could manually select. So just in case there's one single like roll up on a 6.0 and we know we still have one 6.0 and we want that one patch installed to it, you could expand past that 6.5 we selected and select individual patches if you need to, but again, we don't need to do that. So I'm going to go next. If I wanted 6.0 to be patched, I would have selected it at the beginning. So that's what yours should look like, except of course not have Goodman up there in the name. I did have a LAN 1 student do that. They did not use their last name. They used my last name. So click finish. We got a different number. The other ones include from 5.5 through 6.5, and ours only includes 6.5, and plus it includes critical and non-critical patches, bug fixes, updates. There's also baseline that you can create for virtual machines. A lot of these pre-built ones are great. You can upgrade the VMware tools. You can upgrade the virtual appliance itself, if you have any deployed, and the hardware. So if you were made sure that all of your hosts were upgraded and you want all of your virtual machines hardware version level to be upgraded to the latest version so they could take advantage of any new hardware support like extra RAM, extra vCPUs, extra hard disk controllers, things like that. You could go through and tell all 10,000 virtual machines at my company upgrade from version 9 to version 13. I think version 13 may be the latest version out there. And it would go through and update the VMX file and change the little number 9 to a 13 in all of them. ESXi images. If you want to upgrade, if you have a 6.0 hypervisor and you're wanting to upgrade it to 6.5, you'd have to get the 6.5 image and you have to import that image into the vCenter server. And then you could select that 6.0 machine and tell it to upgrade. I cannot import a 6.7 into here. It would fail. It'd go through the whole process and then it would say it was done and it would never show up here because it would determine that it was a later version and it can't handle later versions than the vCenter server itself. And I don't know if it just sticks it on the hard drive or if it actually deletes it off of there, but it never shows up. Been there, done that. You have to have the vCenter server upgraded first. So any questions on updates? Under monitor, and those are all the updates that every day that it's checked for new updates. I was really wanting to do this host update thing, but we can't. So I'm going to go to compliance view now. So this switches us back. So now we're at compliance view. Well, what can we do? This screen, first, we need to attach a baseline, and the next step would be the scan for updates. I think everybody can attach a baseline and scan for updates. It's the staging and remediation that it would be one person doing. But everybody can attach their baseline. So when you click attach baseline, you'll see the pre-built baselines, the one you created, and hopefully all of your partners. I'm going to attach mine by placing a check and clicking OK. Yay, it is attached to the cluster. So we'll scan any host in the cluster. If I did virtual machine tools or hardware baseline, then it would have checked all the virtual machines that were in the cluster. So now that it's attached, I can scan for updates. I don't have any upgrades because I didn't put a ESX host into the system, so I could uncheck that if I wanted to. But there's no upgrade baselines, there's only patches. So I'll hit OK. And it's scanning. No, there's no quiz today. So after the scanning is complete, if I click on my baseline, it shows me systems that are compliant and systems that are not compliant, and any incomplete or unknown. And I have 74 patches. It says that needs to be on each of the systems. Did everybody get 74 patches? So what is Ryan doing? Or did Ryan just log in and leave? He's being horrible. It doesn't even look like he's logged in. So to see the number of patches, so once you've scanned for it, you click on your baseline, and then below that, you'll see you should have non-compliant, and it should show the number of hosts that are non-compliant. And they used to show a pie chart. I'm probably just in a weird view, but it showed a pie chart to show what percentage of your network was compliant and non-compliant. And we should have had just one big red pie. So I wonder if it's the keyboard or it's just Microsoft Surface sucks. Does the Surface have a USB that you plug USB keyboard in? You might also look, I've seen where my docking station at work, I have to update the docking station, and then I have to download like a firmware for the docking station cable. There's actually like electronics in the cable itself that has to be patched ever so often. It's weird. I got a cable one time so I could connect HDMI from my phone to the TV. I had to plug the freaking cable into a computer and tell it to update the cable itself, the firmware on the cable. Like, where is there a chip on this freaking cable? So it's a Surface Bluetooth. The Surface keyboard's garbage. Okay. Okay, well, quit chatting, Ryan. Go do. You're supposed to have baselines and everything logged in. Okay, so does everybody see there's 74 updates? Ted says he doesn't see. Let's see what he's looking at. Hmm. Did you click refresh? You can click on Watson's and see it though. And somebody else's, you can see the non-compliant down there. Cancel that. You don't want to scan again. See the non-compliant? So I don't know why you don't see yours. Unless you didn't create a baseline. But, so Watson shows up the two different ones. So I don't know what the other two scans are down there. You might try to hit the close on them. Thank you. So why don't I see Michael Lawrence patch baseline up there, or Mark's up there? Here's your internet through Mark. AT&T, they have amazing internet all the time. They never go down. It's kind of like me and Suddenlink. I've not had too bad a look out of Suddenlink. Everybody else does, though. You miss people like a couple blocks away. Be out for days. I've been out for days, but not that many times over the last 10 years or 12 years. Okay, so now we're getting down to the point where we have to have one person do something. So now there's two steps. There's a stage patches and there's remediate patch. So we could actually probably do one person per host. So Anthony and I can both do this because we're a two-man group. The rest of y'all have to figure out between the two of you who wants to stage. So let me see, before we start clicking on stuff, let me see what mine looks like. If I click stage, what happens? So I can pick my baseline, and yeah, I could pick my host. So that's what we're going to do. So staging patches, there's what's called a scratch partition on each of your ESX hosts. And every version that you install has a minimum amount of hard disk size. It used to be around 4 gig. I think it's a little bit higher than that now. If you have like an SD card or something, you probably want a 8 or 16 gig SD card. You can slide into the servers. If you remember, we took apart our blade systems and we seen a USB internal slot, and we also seen an SD card that you can slide in on the motherboard. That's normally where ESX is installed. So you slide in the little SD card, preferably, like I said, anything modern, you probably want a 16 gig in size because these patches will be copied up to that SD card in this is like a scratch partition. It's a temporary log location. And once that they're local, then the process of installing can be done. So then the patches will install off the local SD card into the system and initiate a reboot. So the first thing is stage. This is not installing yet. Just copy the patches up to the host. So one person for each of the hosts. Hopefully y'all private messaged each other, figured out who's going to do it. So Eric's doing number 5, I see, but Anthony's doing number 7. I'm doing number 8. Now the rest of y'all hopefully will have somebody that will stage. So when you click stage patches, you'll select your baseline, or if yours doesn't show up, somebody else's baseline that works. So Nathan, you got to figure out between you and Ryan who's going to stage. Y'all are number 6. Ted's going to do ESX3. And if Tyler's is the only baseline that shows up, you can use Tyler's for number 3. Yeah, we're not going to remediate yet. Remediation will be a little bit different process. So once I go next, after I've selected a baseline, I'm going to select my host. That way more students can get clicking done. So one person for each of the hosts, hopefully will be at this point now, number 2. And you're selecting the host that y'all originally installed and worked with. So Anthony was on 7, I was doing number 8. So I'm going to select number 8. And then I'll go next. So now it lists all of the patches that it's going to upload. At this point in time might be a little bit weird. It may not upload all 74 of them because some of these patches, it's listing all patches that are needed for the system. But a few of these patches replace older patches of the same thing. So you may see like an update for any NIC, and down below there may be a later time date where there's an update for any NIC. So it's only going to update the newest one. So if there's 3 or 4 patches for the same thing, it's going to like typically put the very latest one up there. So as I go next, you get the summary. You can go and hit finish on staging of the patches. And then wait on the upload. It's like selecting Windows Update and tell it to download but not install. Although I don't think you can do that with the new Windows 10. I think Windows 10 just goes ahead and installs. Yay, mine's beating Anthony's. Yay. Nope, I got another progress bar. It may have trouble doing both at the same time. So you can watch your, so I see ESX8 finished, but 7 did not. So apparently it did not like 2 admins trying to do staging at the same time against 2 different servers. So it looks like ESX7 failed. It looks like Anthony needs to go through that process again. Since mine is finished, all the progress bars have completed, and then see if staging on 7 will work. This is looking better. It's up to 1% now. So I think it stayed at 0 before. That looks weird. Why does it show 103 for mine? Oh well. Now mine says 103. I don't know. Now they both say 103. What is Ryan doing? Why do you need a file location? We never use the file location. lab are you on? Task 1, Step 6. In the left pane, click Edit Cluster Settings. I don't see anything where it says file location. And task 1's already complete. The rest of the lab was done creating a dynamic baseline. We weren't doing the lab stuff. Okay, let's see. We're going to look at Anthony's, because I'm going to let him do the remediation. The remediation is now going to be one person for the cluster. So remediation is going to have to be done for one person. So who's going to do the remediation for each of the groups? So we were able to split across the staging for multiple people, but the remediation has to be done one person out of the 4 of y'all. So Dalton's going to do it for 2 and 6, no, 2 and 4, I think, or 2 and 5. 2 and 5, okay. 2 and 5, 1 and 3, 6 and 4 together. So we got Dalton doing that. What about group 1 and 3? Who's going to do it out of group 1 and 3? So Tyler's going to do it out of there. So 4 and 6. Who's got it out of group 4 and 6? That'd be either Christian, a Matt, Nathan, or Ryan. Dalton has elected Nathan Worrell to do it. Okay, well, I can't see Anthony's remediate button on the screen, but the people that are doing this under Update Manager, you would click the remediate button. So go ahead and click remediate, Anthony. And move that little box over a little bit to the left, if it will. There you go. So when you click the remediate button, it should come up and show lab cluster in the title. That way you make sure you're on lab cluster, not on your host. And it says remediate. And it says select baselines. So at this point, doesn't really matter what baseline. probably your baseline if it staged correctly, or whatever had a correctly staged one. So I've seen Anthony's staged correctly, so that's good. You can click his. It's going to work on both hosts for the whole cluster. So all the hosts that are in the cluster. So the default right here looks good. It says patch baseline and his baseline is checked. No, you only select the one baseline. So see how Anthony's just got the one checked because they're a duplicate of each other. It probably throw a fit if you try to do two of the same thing at the same time. So go ahead and click next. And then now we're on select target objects. And you'll see at least 2 hosts in your list. And there's 3 checkboxes. Anthony clicked the very top checkbox, which auto-selected the 2 hosts that are in the system. So you'll want to have both hosts selected. And if you look at the host, you'll have your ESX host names, you know, the version column, and then on the patches column, you should see where it says 79, and then in parentheses, it says 29 staged. So I warned you that you would not probably stage 74 patches, that it would figure out that several of them were newer than other ones, and it would only stage the very latest ones that superseded the old ones. So we have a total of 29 files that have been copied up to the server. So everybody should, that is doing the remediation, be the one for each supergroup, should show 29 staged. And all the checkboxes should be checked on the number 2. So let's go ahead and hit next. And on number 3 is it patches and extensions. And this right here is showing you what is actually staged onto the system and how many of each servers have them staged. The ones with the greens are the ones that are the part of the 29, I think it was. Nothing you really need to change here except just going next. The ones in red are outdated and the green ones are the newer ones. So we made no changes on number 3. On number 4, advanced options. You can schedule it to run at a different time. You could ignore warnings. Or you could just hit next. So I don't think we need to ignore anything or schedule. We want to run it now. So we're just going to just hit next without making any changes on number 4. Number 5, host remediation options. So we already went in and made some changes to the defaults, and they should be auto-selected here. So the power state is already set. Do not change VM power state. We disable the removable media. We try entering maintenance mode is checked. And the bottom option, Pixie boot host, that means your actually Blade servers have no internal SSD and they're booted up off of a bootp Pixie boot server. So we don't have that. We actually have ESX installed on the drive. So we don't have to worry about the bottom part unless you're diskless booting servers up. So no changes on number 5. As long as you have do not change VM power state selected and the 2 checkboxes under it are selected, you just hit next. Number 6, and this is also part of the stuff that we pre-selected under Update Manager admin mode, and it should have the 2 checkboxes for disabling distributed power management. Disable fault tolerance should be checked. Disable high availability, the 3rd one there should be checked. We don't need to enable parallel remediation of the host because they have to reboot, and we can't have both hosts go down at the same time because they also, well, no, they don't host the vCenter server, but we don't want the virtual machines all going off So if we had 5 or 6 hosts, we could enable parallel remediation and remediate it, say like 2 or 3 at a time if we wanted to. But with just 2, that's unchecked because you can't really parallel 2 together. You'd have to have more than that so you could migrate the machines off to a third host. So only 3 checks on this one. It looks good. Let's go and hit next. Now we're at the very last. There's a pre-check remediation. It's supposed to generate a report. Why don't we click that button, pre-check remediation, and see what it says. So enhanced vMotion is disabled. It says turn on EVC and disable power management. Okay. Well, we've already got those checkboxes done. We don't have EVC enabled, but we have identical processors, so we don't need to enable EVC. So just hit OK on the report. Nothing looks like it would fail. OK or cancel, or there we go. Okay, everything looks good. Oh no, can't see anymore. So at this point, again, that's just 1 person per supergroup. You click finish, and the remediation process will start. We hope. We hope that there's no virtual machine that has CPU affinity still clicked on. I believe we tested that out in previous labs. And now I can get off of Anthony's screen and just watch the progress on mine. So everybody should be able to watch the progress at the bottom. So it reconfigures the cluster and it starts to remediate entity. And we just sit back and watch the magic happen. So those virtual machines, if you ever got one that's, you go edit the virtual machine and make sure the CD is ejected. So your CD-ROM should not be connected, and it should be should just be unchecked. It's not a lot of magic yet happening. It's got to 54% on ours. Cool stuff is happening down on groups 6. I guess I should check my virtual machines. Anybody show that it went into maintenance mode yet? taking quite a while, a little bit longer than I thought it should take, but I should probably have actually recorded that. So we had their errors. So the way that I found that, I went to monitor under my lab cluster, went to task, clicked on where it failed, and then went down here and started reading the different logs on what happened. And it comes down here. Oh, I jumped down too far. Cannot remediate because it cannot enter maintenance mode. Cool. So my next step that I'm going to try to do to figure out why can't it enter maintenance mode, I'm going to go look and see. So I've got, looks like ESX8 has the fewest number of computers on it. So if I try to enter maintenance mode, it may be because high availability is still turned on. I thought we disabled that mission control stuff. If I try to enter maintenance mode, it entered maintenance mode correctly. Well, that doesn't make sense. What if ESX7, can it enter maintenance mode? Yep, it enters maintenance mode. Well, let me exit maintenance mode. So we're at non-compliant. Let me go edit. It must be something on the cluster. So I'm going to attempt to disable high availability. So with high availability turned off, I'm going to see if that fixes the issue. We don't all need to do that if that doesn't work. But I'm going to go ahead and click remediate and see if it'll go with high availability disabled. I think that might possibly be the issue. Are we taking bets? Okay, well, looking at the screen, it looks like remediation is working. So if the other groups here want to edit your lab cluster and just take the checkbox off of high availability, run through the remediation and see if yours will work. So I went and looked up VMware help, and it said, yes, you do need to turn off high availability. I've had remote access crash before. Yes, we're watching you, Tyler. It jumped to 21% pretty quickly. %, 30%. Reconfiguring virtual machines. That's a good sign. I don't think it did that before. Migrating virtual machines. Installing patches, entered maintenance mode. Yeah, so high availability was blocking our patching. I've also seen on certain versions, I think 6.5 fixed it, but certain versions it would not migrate a vCenter server off of a host and patch it. So whatever host was hosting the vCenter server, you had to do a manual migration of it, and then it would patch the host. Yeah, now it's rebooting ESX3, so that will take a bit of time for the system to go all the way down, go through the post, and come back up. Once it comes back up and exits maintenance mode, you'll see another flurry of activity at the bottom. It'll probably take it about 8 minutes to do the 8 to 10 minutes or so to get the full reboot. You'll see all the other virtual machines migrate over to 3, and then ESX1 will be patched and installed. Lots of little configuration things that can have issues of getting the update to go, but it is a lot easier to let the update manager do it than try to do it by command line and do it by hand. So here's a story. Great story about servers on our campus. We have a, let's see, I don't remember if they were HP or the Dell machines. I think they were the HP. I don't remember. One of the machines, we have Dell servers, Blade servers for some of our stuff, and HP Blades for others. So we were trying to upgrade to 6.7. You go to the VMware site, and if you're running an HP, Dell server, IBM, something like that, you typically download to OEM tab when you're downloading these new versions of ESXi host, and you pick the server generation. You pick Dell or HP, and then you go under the generation, and you download the version that supports your server that you've got. Our servers, they stopped supporting or stopped building, not VMware didn't stop supporting, but the vendors stopped creating custom VMware installer images at 6.7. So I want to download either Dell or HP for 6.7. It didn't have, say, generation 6 anymore, or 8, or whatever it was. They only had generation like 9 and higher. So I went ahead and downloaded the generation 9 that was for the HP machine or Dell machine or whichever it was. It's like, well, maybe it'll install. I go through and try to install the system, and it pops up and says the old system has certain VIBs that the new one doesn't have. And VIBs are basically drivers. That's what they call them in VMware. So it gave me a list of VIBs or drivers that were on the old installation that we were running that was not in the new one. So I researched each of those and figured out what the driver was for, and found out that the hardware that they were supporting wasn't even in the system. So I went and found that I could SSH into the old systems and run a command to remove those drivers out of the installed image. And after I removed all of the drivers that it complained about, rebooted the server to make sure all the hardware and everything was still working, then I tried the upgrade process again, and it went ahead and installed. So it wasn't going to upgrade because it was afraid that there were certain drivers that if it tried to upgrade, the drivers would not be there to install, and after the upgrade, it didn't want hardware not working. But they were pretty obscure network adapters and RAID controllers that were not in the old system, and simply removing them out allowed the upgrade to go ahead and take place. The vendor that originally installed the systems had told IT that their systems were outdated and they could not be upgraded. They had to have to spend, another $60,000 for new systems to be replaced so they could be upgraded. But I just simply found the software that was no longer needed, removed it, and the upgrade worked just fine. However, in our situation, the purple screen of death, they don't support our processors and our HP servers anymore. It can't install. The kernel was compiled with new registers and stuff, requirements. So if we try to install 6.7 on our machines, it just pops up. It doesn't run. We get a purple screen, CPU not compatible. So I thought that was a cool story. Looks like Ryan needs to watch some Linus Tech Tips on how to link up stuff. I wonder if it's firmware updates he's needing. Yep, Brian's gone. And I'm starting to looking at my iPhone 5 over here, and there's so many apps that won't install on it. IT is starting to use a new two-factor app authentication instead of texting, because texting is people can spoof SMS and they can reroute those login to their phones and get into systems now. So now they're using an app method. It's supposed to be more secure, but my iPhone 5, it won't run the iOS. I'm thinking iPhone 5s are only about 6 years old. 6 to 7 years old. You think about spending $1,000 on the phone and it's outdated in 6 or 7 years. I didn't spend $1,000 on the 5. It was bought used a couple years old, but you know, that's beside the point. $1,000 phone should last more than 5 or 6 years. It's Apple's marketing. Only support their devices for what, 4 years, and then they're done with it. Maybe 5. I mean, even Windows supports versions of long-term versions of Windows for 10 years. So if you're noticing on my screen, the 8 has come out of maintenance mode, booted back up. No, that was 7, I guess. Wait, did it do both of them? Apparently it did both of them. They're both compliant. Cool. Well, that was faster than I thought it was going to be. So we have green check boxes. Pretty neat. Yeah, I think yours would be a few minutes behind mine. Another few more minutes, it'll finish out. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. If everybody's is at least got one compliant and the other one's finishing up, we don't have to sit here and watch it. And I've got an 11 o'clock class. I need to end this meeting and let it render the video and get it loaded up so I can get my Zoom for 11 o'clock going. What we'll do on Tuesday, we'll come back and we'll look and see if we have VMware tools or hardware upgrades on our virtual machines. Those updates may have put a new VMware tools that all of these need. Well, no, they don't. These are CentOS machines that are controlled by CentOS, not the VMware tool upgrade thing, but we can check for the hardware upgrade. So we'll do that on Tuesday. We'll probably look at reviewing for the chapter 10 and 11 quiz on Tuesday. And we'll probably do our quiz on Thursday next week. So that would be, just the day after we do our review. So I'm going to go ahead and log out. And if it's remediating, it should still continue remediating whether you're logged in or not. You've already initiated that. So it wouldn't hurt to log out of the system. And I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting and render this video and get ready for my 11 o'clock.